of its outreach. And this is, again, right from the beginning, because there was the, you always had this state, there was a lead bank for every state. And so this thinking started early, but I think the proliferation of banking has really helped. SDGs that people have talked about have done, I think the important thing is really not to think in terms of the policy, but what happens to poverty depends on the combination of the policy and the environment in which the policy is operating. So the RBI will give you a lot of statistics on how many SDGs have been created, how many loans have been given. What we actually did was went back to track these SDGs and saw, to look at what happened over time. And we found that about 10 to 15% of all SDGs created don't exist after 4 years. Now that's a large number. What's worrisome is not so much the size of the number, because things are going to, go wrong. We have many more loans that are unpaid, is being talked about now. But the disturbing part of this was that these SDGs that collapsed were disproportionately poor, they were disproportionately tribal, and so we really need to mix the environment with the policy to see which policies are good. Technology, I think this Disha thing is really fascinating. I didn't know about it. I think it's incredible that you can actually go to a place and see what's there. And that's what's going to bring in governance, because a big problem now is you go to your village school, and if you don't know whether something better is happening around, then there's no way that you can use the political system to demand that. Okay, so I think those are the successes, with some caveats. Now, in terms of areas that need more attention, SDGs, I really think we need to think about what the SDG is aiming to do. And it's aiming to do a lot of different things. So it's bringing women together, it's providing solidarity, it's providing an outlet for just various things. I mean, it gives loans, it helps you link up with banks and link up with the formal system. The thing is that an SDG on the growth and income front can do very, very little if they're not vibrant markets close by. So I've been to SDGs in northern Orissa, I've been to SDGs in South India, and SDGs can be, it's just like saying you can have many different meals on your plate. And there are many, many, many different SDGs. And so in Jharkhand or northern Orissa, you go to SDGs, and the only thing that women have to do is walk with a bunch of sticks on market day to go and sell these a long way away. And so you can give them loans, but there's no way that they can do anything with those loans. And what SDGs are still doing useful things in those areas. They're helping with domestic violence. Women have people to talk to. They're helping with other government programs, because now you go in a group. So there are other things that it's doing, but I think that the SDGs are complex, and you need to think much more about what are the different things you want them to achieve, and they're achieving some of these and not others. And so that needs much, much more research. It needs more thought. Mobility is really where we haven't done anything. So I think generally when we think about poverty reduction, we've recognized now that poverty has many dimensions. What we don't recognize is really that it's linked to things like healthcare, to education, to the environment. So we're sort of delinking. What's happened over the years is, I think, once we started talking about poverty and we got interested in poverty, we started making up schemes. And so we have many, many, many schemes. And every government, of course, will come out with its own schemes because it doesn't like the name of the old schemes. And they're just way too many schemes. And this is not a question about rationalization. It's a point, the point is really that you're not thinking enough about what's causing that poverty and what is causing people to move in and out of poverty. And I think on mobility, what we really need is to address the fact that people learn very little when they're in school. They get treated very badly when they're sick. And we need to do that. And it's not that we're not doing that. For example, the Right to Education Act is doing that to some extent. The current budget has announced a huge increase in health expenditure. What's really important is to confront the deficiencies in the public system head on. It's very, very different to allocate a large amount for health expenditure and give it to health insurance companies. And it's very completely different to say we're going to figure out partnerships that are going to make existing public health centers work better. And the difficulty of information in health is really huge. You're sick and someone gives you a painkiller and you don't know whether you've been cured or whether you've been numbed. And I think you really have to confront this. You go to a school, people give you tests, you really don't know whether what you're learning is useful, whether the history, in quotes, is history or it's ideology, or you're not learned to question. You have to do that, and you have to confront that head on. So what's happened over the years, and this is across governments, is you've abdicated that responsibility, and you've said, well, the RTE applies, so private schools, private hospitals, private schools have to give some seats to underprivileged. 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes. You have to give a number of seats. Hospitals have to give a number of beds. That's very, very different to say what we're spending on the public system has to work better. And I think that links with local politics, and it links with governance and incentives, but much more thought on that. What else? Nutrition. So this is, again, if you're promoting organic farming, try to figure out a little bit better. Don't do it again as an ideological thing. Try to think about what the benefits and costs are, what commercial versus these other types of farming is doing. You have a procurement system. So now there's been a big increase in procurement. I welcome the fact that you've gone from rice and wheat to many more things. The fact is, when you have procurement, you're not going to produce the tastiest food or the healthiest food. You're going to produce food at the cheapest possible price. Okay? The cost has to be kept down if you're going to make money out of procurement. Finally, measurement. So everyone realizes that an environment is a huge problem. Okay? The current government, I haven't heard anything. Now, I might be wrong, and I would like Mr. Tiwari to tell me. I haven't heard anything about the measurement of air quality in rural areas. Biomass is a huge problem, right? We have some monitoring in the mega cities. We don't have any in the towns, by and large. We have none in the rural areas. And then let me stop because I'm running out of time. Let me just come for a couple of minutes to, can I take 2 more minutes, Mr. Vijay Kumar? Yes, but so let me just say things, and then I can talk to you later if you want to say something, if you want to talk about this. So what do we need to do? We need to measure poverty better. And this is not about multidimensional poverty. This is about the fact that India is the only country among a set of countries which it aspires to be part of, a group of countries it aspires to be part of, which collects no income data that's reasonable. So most censuses in the world collect both income and other characteristics. We don't. So we rely on the NSS. As a result, when you go to a public school, if that public school is very good, it won't show up in your consumption data. If you go to a private school and spend a lot, it will show up in your consumption data. So your income statistics and so your poverty statistics are mismeasured. Okay, and you need to merge data sets. So if the current government can really take its administrative data and then merge it and get people to work on it, the only thing I would say is don't think about Niti Aayog being the advisor to the government. It should be, of course, all right? But there are experts all over the world who know about particular things. So right now, the expert on household air pollution is sitting in the University of Berkeley, and he sits in IIT Delhi. Just make sure he's doing the stuff. And so just reach out to people wherever they are, and don't stay within government, because you're limited. Everyone is limited in both time and expertise. Let me stop there.
Well, thanks a lot. A very wide-ranging discussion. I'm not going over any of it again, but it's put a lot of material on the table. I hope I would be disappointing people if we didn't take questions, but we are also running out of time and we want to get into the next session. So I will just suggest two questions, to take 2 questions. Please raise your hand and be brief in the question, not make a comment or a digression. And also, in case it's to address to a particular panel member, please mention to whom it is addressed.
Thank you, sir. wonderful presentation by all the speakers. I just have very pointed questions to each of the four speakers. I would request Shri Vijay Kumarji, the chairman, that the data which you provided was up to 2011, 2004 to 2011, 2012. Could he extrapolate it up to 2017, because it's quite old? That is the poverty alleviation rate. Because why I'm saying this is that in recent years, the poverty alleviation rate must have changed over the years. Then my second question is...
Just one question, because I have to go to another person.
Okay.
So, whom is it addressed to?
To Sri Rajesh ji.
Okay. Okay. Well, I think actually Mr. Tiwari is better able to answer, because I can only show data that somebody gives me. I do not generate the data, but he is better placed in that respect. But I think some of the data has a certain periodicity, and maybe MOSPI may actually be trying to improve the periodicity in relation to now the indicators of the SDGs. There's also the new SECC data, which may give something. Atul, would you like to say just a few words?
I would just like to add over here, just one simple question to Tiwari ji, that with regard to the question which you are raising about the guidelines for poverty as a measure, why don't we follow what the World Bank is saying, that now they are saying $1.9, which is realistic enough, 123 rupees. We can't talk about 33 rupees and 27 rupees at this stage.
So I can always pass the buck by saying that Mr. Vijay Kumar had been Secretary of Rural Development. He will be in a better position to tell that. Or Niti Aayog is here, they will be able to tell it. I can confine myself to saying that what you're saying is required. If you want to have any objective assessment on movement, on poverty, we need to have some time series data with regard to people living below poverty line. But as of now, we do not have any such poverty line. Like Mr. Tendulkar committee was there, then it was brought there, and things are hanging as it is. And that's why we are not going into that area altogether. And from rural development side and mostly other government department side also, we are taking the ACCC data, which is very, if you can always see it, is very well-defined data on the deprivation criteria. And that is what we are following. So that has been our request to Niti Aayog also to guide us in this matter. Maybe they will take a view. They are more qualified people than me or rural development to think about it.
Yeah, I think that is the point. You see, the question which is going around is whether, given the SECC data, you also need a poverty line or not. Earlier, there was a poverty line, and then states were actually within the poverty line, and the numbers were actually using criteria to select who the person was up to the number that the state was allocated. So in that sense, it's you can use the SECC data, but it helps if you have a poverty line which applied at the state level, give the numbers. And then you use the SECC or other criteria to work out who the individuals are. So there are actually two issues here, numbers and the people. So I'm sure Niti Aayog is well aware of it and is working on it. The last question, and then I will close.
Yeah. My question is, we didn't talk much about increasing rural incomes. So didn't hear much about the common agriculture, dairy, and animal husbandry related. Lot of enterprises can come up in the villages. So didn't hear much on that, and food processing infrastructure also. Common because people can share in the rural areas.
Since I was given a limited time, and since my another colleague, Mr. Atal Dalu, will be joining, he will explain at length what we are doing for the rural livelihood, and we are linking with the dairy, we are linking with, as Professor Tandon was saying, with Narega, and we are making a lot of assets, and there are voluntary organizations are there, SSGs are there, federations are there, we are also going producer groups. So the whole gamut of activity which is going around. We have also MKSP. So that will amount to quite a lecture. So that's why I thought I will leave it at that, yes, sir, we are doing quite a lot on the rural livelihood and increase in the income level.
So I think with that we can close, but I'll just, if I can just supplement the livelihoods and SDGs. You know, the SDG movement has a history to it, but the Rural Development Ministry would actually, I think, distinguish between SDGs and SDGs in the sense that after the National Rural Livelihoods Mission came, a particular protocol was put in place to form SDGs and to grow SDGs. Actually, the SDG development after that is a very organic process. You actually select blocks and develop the SDGs in those blocks, and SDG formation in blocks outside those do not have the quality and the rigor and the integrity that these SDGs have. You will actually find that the uptake of credit in the SDGs under the mission is far higher, repayments are far higher. There is a full, and they are actually federating village level SDGs into higher SDGs. They are reforming SDGs into producer groups, because SDGs are homogeneous groups of poor. They are not producer groups. They won't produce one common product. So you need to actually process the people in that group to form producer groups who then link to the markets. So there's a huge process going on there, and it bears actually looking at, because states that have done it, like Kerala, which has Kudumbashri, and Tamil Nadu and Andhra, the results are incredible. You know, if you look at the total